The moment I opened our family group chat, my heart stopped. Lauren had just posted our annual family portrait with the caption, "Finally perfected." Heart emojis poured in from every direction. Everyone admired how beautiful the picture looked. Then I tapped to enlarge it. The smiles were the same. The backyard was the same. Every member of my family was exactly where I remembered them standing, except me. I had been erased so perfectly that it looked as if I'd never existed. Before I could even catch my breath, my 7-year-old granddaughter Sophie called me with tears in her eyes. "Grandma, why aren't you in our family anymore?" I had no answer. If you've ever felt invisible inside your own family, I'd love for you to tell me your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes the weight a little lighter. And if heartfelt family stories like this speak to you, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe so we can continue sharing these journeys together. Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. My name is Barbara Garcia, and until that photograph appeared in our family group chat, I believed I knew exactly where I belonged. I'm 68 years old, retired after spending more than 3 decades as an elementary school librarian in Columbus, Ohio. Children used to joke that I could find any book in the building with my eyes closed. They weren't far from the truth. I always believed every story deserved to be preserved because memories fade much faster than paper. Maybe that's why photographs became so important to me. Every hallway in our home tells a story. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings, fishing trips, and family reunions line the walls. Every album on my bookshelf has handwritten notes beneath each picture, the date, the place, and sometimes a funny little detail that everyone else would eventually forget. My husband Michael always teased me. If the house ever catches fire, he'd laugh. "You'll save those photo albums before you save me." I'd smile and answer the same way every time. "Only because you'll already be outside telling the firefighters what happened." That joke never got old. Michael and I have been married for 45 years. We've lived through layoffs, illnesses, mortgage payments, broken cars, and all the ordinary storms that make a marriage stronger if you're willing to weather them together. We only had one child, David. From the day he was born, my world quietly shifted around him. I wasn't an overbearing mother. At least I never wanted to be. I attended his baseball games. I helped with homework. I stayed up late when he struggled through college finals. When he bought his first house, Michael and I spent 2 weekends painting every bedroom before he moved in. I never expected anything in return. Seeing him build a happy life was enough. Then, David met Lauren. The first time I met her was at a neighborhood Italian restaurant. She stood up when Michael and I arrived. She hugged me before I even reached the table. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you, Barbara," she said warmly. She remembered my birthday. She asked questions about my retirement. She laughed at Michael's terrible jokes. Driving home that night, I told Michael exactly what I felt. "I think David found someone very special." Michael nodded. "I think you're right. When they married a year later, I never once thought of Lauren as competition. I genuinely wanted another daughter. When she asked for my old pie recipe before their first Thanksgiving together, I happily wrote every ingredient on a recipe card. When she called, asking how to roast a turkey, I talked her through every step. When she forgot how much cinnamon belonged in the apple filling, I laughed and reminded her. She always thanked me, always smiled, always seemed grateful. At least that's what I believed. 3 years later, Sophie was born. The first time she wrapped her tiny fingers around mine, I felt something inside me soften all over again. Grandchildren have a way of doing that. They remind you that life keeps blooming even when your own seasons begin slowing down. Sophie loved coming to our house. She called it Grandma's library. Every Friday afternoon, she'd run through my front door without knocking. "I'm here." Michael would pretend to look around. "Who said that I don't see anybody?" She'd giggle before jumping into his arms. Our weekends became traditions. Pancakes shaped like animals, storybooks before bedtime, walks through the neighborhood park, cookie baking every Saturday afternoon. Sometimes she'd ask me to tell stories about her daddy when he was little. I never embarrassed him too badly. Well, not too badly. Lauren often thanked me for watching Sophie. "You're such a lifesaver," she'd say. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words always sounded sincere. Looking back now, maybe they were. Or maybe people can tell the truth while hiding another one underneath it. The first tiny changes happened so gradually that I barely noticed them. Lauren volunteered to host every Thanksgiving. That seemed reasonable. Her house was larger than ours. The following Christmas, she suggested opening presents at her place too. Again, it made sense. There was more room for Sophie to play. Then Easter moved to her backyard. 4th of July became her barbecue. Halloween pumpkin carving happened in her kitchen. One holiday after another quietly shifted away from traditions Michael and I had created over decades. I told myself families naturally change. Children grow up. New traditions replace old ones. That wasn't something to resent. It was simply life. Still, there were little moments I couldn't explain. One Thanksgiving, everyone gathered in the dining room while I finished bringing food from the kitchen. By the time I sat down, Lauren had rearranged the seating. David sat beside her. Sophie sat beside David. Michael and I ended up at the opposite end of the table. It wasn't rude. It wasn't dramatic. It simply felt different. Another Christmas, Lauren organized matching pajamas for everyone. She'd bought identical sets for herself, David, Sophie, even Michael. Mine was a different color. "Oh," she said quickly. "The store ran out." I smiled. "It doesn't matter." Because honestly, it didn't. Or at least I kept telling myself it didn't. Then came birthdays, family barbecues, neighborhood cookouts. Lauren loved posting pictures online. Every event appeared on social media within hours. One afternoon, I noticed something strange. In almost every picture she posted, I wasn't there. Sometimes she'd chosen photos taken before I arrived, sometimes after I'd stepped inside. Sometimes I had simply been standing outside the frame. I laughed about it. Michael didn't. "You think that's coincidence?" he asked. "I don't know." He looked at me for a long moment. "I've started paying attention." That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Michael rarely criticized people. If he noticed something, it usually meant he'd been watching quietly for quite some time. Still, I defended Lauren. "You're reading too much into it." "Maybe. And social media isn't real life." "I know. So let's not invent problems." He squeezed my hand. "I'm not inventing anything." I changed the subject because I hated conflict, especially inside families. I'd spent 45 years believing families survived because someone chose peace. Most of the time, that someone had been me. I never imagined that choosing peace sometimes allows pain to grow unnoticed. When the annual Garcia family reunion was announced a few weeks later, I couldn't wait. Every summer, cousins, nieces, nephews, and old family friends gathered for one long Saturday filled with laughter. I packed my camera the night before, made potato salad using my mother's recipe, printed little name tags for the youngest children. Michael smiled while watching me organize everything. "You've done this every year." "I know." "You still get excited?" "I always will." At that moment, I had no idea that reunion would become the beginning of the hardest chapter of my life. I thought I was simply getting ready to make more beautiful memories. I never imagined someone else was already preparing to erase one. The Garcia family reunion had been a tradition for nearly 30 years. No matter how busy life became, everyone showed up. Some drove across town. Others flew in from neighboring states. Children who once played tag in my backyard now arrived with children of their own. Every reunion reminded me how quickly time moves. Michael and I arrived early that Saturday morning. The reunion was held at my cousin Frank's farmhouse just outside Columbus. His backyard stretched across several acres with towering oak trees providing shade from the July sun. As always, I brought my camera. Not my phone, my actual camera. Everyone teased me for refusing to rely on smartphones. "You still carrying that thing?" David laughed as he unloaded folding chairs from his SUV. I patted the camera hanging from my shoulder. "It never lets me down." Lauren smiled politely. "I guess we'll have the professional photos again." I hope so. Photography had quietly become my role in the family. Nobody assigned it to me. It simply happened over the years. If someone wanted baby pictures, they called me. If someone needed an old graduation photo, they asked me. If someone couldn't remember what year Grandpa bought the lake cabin, I probably had a picture with the date written on the back. I never minded. Someone had to protect our family's memories. By noon, the backyard was full. Children chased bubbles across the grass. Teenagers pretended they weren't related to one another. The older men argued about baseball. The women laughed over recipes that nobody ever actually followed. Michael stood beside the grill, helping Frank flip hamburgers. I wandered from group to group with my camera. Click. My niece helping her toddler eat watermelon. Click. David laughing with his cousins. Click. Michael stealing a hot dog before lunch officially started. "I saw that," I called. He grinned without looking guilty. "You don't have proof." I lifted my camera. "Oh, I definitely have proof." Everyone laughed. Those were always my favorite photographs. The ones nobody planned, real smiles, real people, no posing. Around 3 o'clock, Lauren walked over carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed me one. "You've barely sat down all day." "I'll rest later." She glanced toward my camera. "How many pictures have you taken already?" "I stopped counting after 100. She laughed. "I should have known." Her tone sounded light, friendly. Then she asked something I didn't think much about. "When you get home, could you send me all the originals?" "Of course. I've been learning some photo editing." "Oh, I found this AI program that makes pictures look amazing." I smiled. "As long as you don't make me look 20 years younger." Lauren laughed. "No promises." It seemed like harmless conversation. Nothing more. Later that afternoon, someone shouted across the yard, "Time for the family picture." Immediately, everyone began gathering near the giant maple tree. Every reunion ended with one official group portrait. It was our tradition. Children complained. Adults adjusted sunglasses. Someone always forgot where they were supposed to stand. Some traditions never change. Since I was usually behind the camera, I almost never appeared in these group photographs. This year, however, my cousin insisted. "Barbara, you're getting in this one." "I can set the timer." "No." He pointed toward a teenage neighbor mowing the property next door. "Hey, Tyler, can you help us for 1 minute?" The young man walked over, smiling. "No problem." I handed him my camera. "Just press this button." "I've got it." The entire family shuffled into position. Michael wrapped one arm around my shoulders. David stood beside Lauren. Little Sophie squeezed herself between her parents before suddenly running toward me. "I want Grandma." She grabbed my hand. Lauren laughed. "Sophie, sweetheart, you're supposed to stand with Mommy." "I can stand with Grandma, too." Everyone chuckled. Eventually, Sophie agreed to return beside her parents after I promised we'd take another picture together later. Tyler counted loudly. 1. Everyone smiled. 2. A little breeze lifted the leaves overhead. 3. Click, then another click. And one more click, just to be safe, exactly as we always did. Tyler handed my camera back. I took 3. Thank you. I quickly looked through them. They were wonderful. Everyone smiling, nobody blinking. Perfect. Lauren stepped beside me. Can you airdrop those to me? Sure. Within seconds, every full resolution image sat on her phone. She looked through them carefully. These are really good. I think Tyler deserves the credit. She shook her head. The lighting is beautiful. She paused for a moment longer than necessary. I'll clean them up. What do you mean? Oh, little things. She zoomed into one image. Remove shadows. Fix colors. Maybe brighten everyone's faces. I nodded. Sounds nice. She continued studying the screen. So, nobody else posts them yet? That surprised me. Why? I'd like everyone to see the finished version first. All right. Again, nothing about the conversation felt openly strange, but afterward, I noticed something. Lauren stopped letting anyone else look at her phone. When David reached for it to check one picture, she casually pulled it back. I'll show you later. At dinner, Sophie asked if she could see the family photo. Lauren smiled. Not yet. Why, I'm making it prettier. Sophie accepted that answer. Children usually do. After dessert, people gathered around the fire pit. Stories from decades ago resurfaced. Someone mentioned Grandpa Garcia teaching all the cousins how to fish. Someone else remembered the infamous Thanksgiving turkey Michael accidentally dropped onto the kitchen floor 20 years earlier. I laughed so hard tears rolled down my cheeks. Michael leaned toward me. That story is never going away. No. And neither should it. I believed that. Families are held together by stories, the embarrassing ones, the joyful ones, even the painful ones. Every memory deserves a place. As sunset painted the sky, orange relatives slowly began leaving. Cars pulled down the gravel driveway one after another. Hugs lasted longer than usual. Nobody wanted the day to end. Lauren hugged me goodbye. I'll send everyone the edited picture in a day or 2. No rush. I want it to be perfect. I smiled. It's already perfect. She looked directly at me. I think it can be better. Something about the way she said those words stayed with me during the drive home. Not because they sounded cruel, because they sounded determined. Michael drove while I scrolled through the pictures on my camera. Every photograph made me smile. Children laughing, families hugging, generations together, exactly the kind of memories I loved preserving. Michael glanced toward me. You happy? I am. You got some good pictures, the best we've had in years. He nodded quietly. I'm glad. Then after several miles of silence, he asked an unexpected question. Did you notice Lauren today? What do you mean? She seemed awfully interested in those pictures. I shrugged. She's excited about editing. Maybe. You think something's wrong? I don't know. I looked out the window at the passing fields. I think you're overthinking it. He didn't argue. He simply returned his attention to the road. Looking back now, I wish I had listened. Because somewhere between that beautiful summer afternoon and the moment Lauren shared the finished photograph, something had changed. And I was the only one who didn't see it coming. 3 days passed after the reunion. Life settled back into its usual rhythm. Michael worked in the garden every morning. I watered the flowers on the porch. Every afternoon, I found myself opening the family group chat, wondering if Lauren had finished editing the reunion photo. I wasn't impatient. I was simply excited. For years, that annual picture had become something special. I printed one every summer. One copy went into the family album, another into a frame in the hallway. A third was tucked inside a keepsake box labeled Garcia family. Wednesday afternoon, while folding laundry, my phone buzzed. Garcia family Lauren had posted. Finally finished, I cleaned up the reunion picture. Hope everyone loves it. Within seconds, replies flooded the chat. Beautiful, looks amazing, great job, frame-worthy, heart emojis, thumbs up, smiling faces. I smiled too. Then I tapped the picture. At first, everything looked wonderful. The colors were brighter. The grass looked greener. The sky had become a deeper blue. The lighting was softer. Lauren had done impressive work. Then my eyes drifted toward the center. My smile disappeared. I zoomed in, then zoomed again. My hands suddenly felt cold. I wasn't standing beside Michael anymore. In fact, I wasn't anywhere. The place where I had stood beside my husband was now filled with a perfectly edited section of green grass. The maple tree behind us had been reconstructed so naturally that no one unfamiliar with the original picture would ever know someone had been standing there. Me. I stared at the screen for nearly a full minute. Maybe I opened the wrong photo. I backed out, opened it again. No. Same picture. I walked into the living room where Michael sat reading the newspaper. Can you look at something? He lowered his glasses. What is it? I handed him my phone. His eyes moved across the picture. Then they stopped exactly where mine had. His expression changed immediately. He looked up at me. Barbara. They removed me. He looked back at the picture. There was no confusion on his face, no hesitation, only disbelief. You're gone. I nodded slowly. I know. He enlarged the image. They didn't crop you. No. They erased you. Yes. The word sounded strange coming out of my mouth. Erased. Not forgotten, not left out. Erased. Michael remained silent. Finally, he asked, Did anyone else notice? I looked at the group chat again. More compliments had appeared. Not one person mentioned me. Either no one noticed, or no one was looking closely. I wanted to type something. Anything. Lauren, I think something happened to the picture. I seem to be missing. Could you send the original? Instead, I locked my phone. I don't want to embarrass anyone. Michael frowned. What if this wasn't an accident? I don't know. But if it was, I don't want to accuse her. He nodded reluctantly. I understand. Even then, my first instinct wasn't anger. It was protection. Protection for my family, protection for Lauren, protection for David. Families survive because someone chooses grace. Or at least, that's what I'd always believed. Still, something inside me hurt more deeply than I wanted to admit. I walked down the hallway toward the framed reunion photos from previous years. There I was in every single one, standing beside Michael, sometimes holding Sophie, sometimes laughing, sometimes squinting because of the sun, proof that I belonged. I suddenly realized how strange one missing person could make an otherwise perfect photograph feel. Michael quietly joined me. He slipped his hand into mine. You okay? I forced a smile. I'm trying to be. You don't have to pretend with me. That sentence almost broke me, because I had already started pretending with myself. I kept searching for reasonable explanations. Maybe artificial intelligence made a mistake. Maybe the software misidentified me as part of the background. Maybe Lauren hadn't even noticed. Technology does strange things sometimes. Didn't it? That evening, David called. He wanted to discuss plans for Labor Day weekend. His voice sounded cheerful. He never mentioned the picture. Neither did I. Several times during the conversation, I almost asked, but every time I stopped myself. Why? Because I feared the answer. Or perhaps because I feared sounding ridiculous. Imagine calling your son to say, "I think your wife accidentally erased me from our family." Even saying those words inside my own head sounded unbelievable. After dinner, I opened the group chat once more. Lauren had changed the family group icon. The edited reunion picture now appeared beside every message. Every time my phone buzzed, I saw a family portrait that no longer included me. It was only a tiny image, yet somehow, it hurt even more. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time, it was a video call. Sophie's smiling face filled the screen. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing exciting." She held the phone too close to her face. "I miss you." "I miss you too." "When can I come over soon?" She smiled. Then her expression suddenly changed. She became strangely serious. Children don't know how to hide confusion. Whatever they're thinking appears immediately on their faces. "Grandma?" "Yes." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you move away?" I laughed softly. "No." "Then—" She looked down for a second. "Why aren't you in our family anymore?" The room became perfectly still. My heart actually skipped. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She held another phone toward the camera. Lauren's phone. The family group picture filled the screen. She pointed at it with one tiny finger. "You're gone." I swallowed hard. "I noticed." "Did you get in trouble?" "No." "Did Mommy say you can't be in the picture anymore?" I froze. "What?" She blinked. "I just don't understand." Neither did I. Before I could ask another question, Lauren's voice echoed from somewhere in the house. "Sophie, who are you talking to?" "My grandma? I'll be right there." Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. "I miss you in the picture." "So do I." Lauren entered the room before I could continue. "Oh." She smiled brightly. "I didn't realize you were talking to Barbara." She took the phone from Sophie. "Sorry, she's been asking funny questions all evening." I forced another smile. "Kids notice everything." Lauren laughed. "They certainly do." For a brief second, our eyes met through the screen. I searched her face for surprise, for guilt, for embarrassment. I found none. She looked completely comfortable, almost too comfortable. "We'll see you next week," she said pleasantly. "I hope so." She ended the call. The screen went black. Michael had been standing in the doorway the entire time. He'd heard every word. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he whispered, "That little girl noticed what every adult missed." I looked back at the family chat, at the smiling faces, at the beautiful picture, at the empty space where I should have been standing. And for the very first time, a question entered my mind that frightened me far more than the photograph itself. What if this hadn't been a mistake? What if someone wanted my granddaughter to slowly get used to seeing a family? Without me, I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the family portrait. Not because it was beautiful, because it wasn't true. Someone had looked at a picture containing every member of our family and decided I didn't belong in it. I kept replaying Sophie's question. "Grandma, why aren't you in our family anymore?" Children don't invent questions like that. They ask what they see. The next morning, I made coffee long before sunrise. Michael found me sitting alone at the kitchen table. "You've been awake all night." "I know. You need to talk to Lauren." "I suppose I do. You've always taught David to solve problems by talking." "I know. So, don't carry this alone." He was right. Avoiding conflict had never actually solved conflict. It had only delayed it. Around 10 o'clock, I opened my phone and typed a message. I erased it, typed another, erased that one too. Finally, I settled on something simple. "Hi, Lauren. The reunion picture looks beautiful. I noticed I'm missing from the final version. Could you send me the original photo? I think the editing software may have made a mistake." I read it 3 times. There wasn't a single accusation. Only kindness. Then I pressed send. 5 minutes later, Lauren replied. "Oh my goodness, I didn't even notice." My shoulders relaxed a little. Maybe it really had been an accident. Then another message appeared. "The AI editing app has been acting strange lately." Another. "It probably confused you with the background." I frowned. "Confused me?" With the background, I typed back. "Technology certainly does funny things sometimes. Could you send me the original version so I can compare them?" A few minutes passed. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Finally, she replied. "I'm at work right now. I'll send it later." "Fair enough." I thanked her. The conversation ended. I waited. That afternoon, I checked my phone several times. No picture. The following morning, still nothing. By evening, nearly 36 hours had passed. No original, no explanation, no follow-up. I didn't want to become annoying, so I sent another message. "Whenever you have a chance, I'd still love the original photo." This time, the reply came almost immediately. "I think I accidentally deleted it." Deleted it? That stopped me. Who deletes the original family portrait? Professional photographers never do. Neither do parents. Neither do grandparents. Original photographs are priceless. Edited copies can always be recreated. I stared at her message, then looked toward my bookshelf. Every photograph I'd ever taken still existed somewhere. Printed, backed up, copied, protected. Deleting the original had never even crossed my mind. Michael came inside carrying tomatoes from the garden. "Any luck?" I handed him my phone. He read the conversation quietly. "Deleted." "That's what she says." He frowned. "Does that make sense to you?" "No. It doesn't make sense to me either." For another hour, I debated whether I should involve David. Part of me hated the idea. Nobody wants to place a son between his mother and his wife, but I also knew David might have his own copy. During the reunion, several people had taken pictures. Surely someone still had the original. I called him after dinner. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." "Everything okay?" "Yes." I tried to keep my voice calm. "I wanted to ask about the reunion picture." "Oh, wasn't it great? It looked beautiful. I'm glad Lauren fixed it up. I noticed I wasn't in it." Silence. Then he laughed softly. "Oh. You noticed? I thought maybe you wouldn't." His answer surprised me. "What do you mean?" "I figured the editing software messed something up." "So, you noticed too?" "Yeah." "I assumed Lauren told you." "No. I didn't think it was a big deal." I looked at Michael across the room. He slowly shook his head. I asked carefully, "Do you still have the original?" "I don't think so." "Lauren had all the files. Could you ask her for one?" There was another pause. "Mom?" "Yes. It's really just a picture." I felt something sink inside my chest. "I know. Technology makes mistakes. I understand. I'm sure she didn't do it on purpose." I hope not. He laughed again. You worry too much. Those 4 words hurt more than he realized, because suddenly, I wasn't simply questioning a photograph. I was questioning my own judgment. Had I become one of those older people who saw problems where none existed? Was I making something enormous out of a simple editing mistake? Maybe I was. After we ended the call, I remained sitting in silence. Michael finally asked, "What did he say?" "He thinks I'm overreacting." Michael sighed. "He believes her." "Yes." "And you—" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stared through the kitchen window. For the first time since all of this began, I questioned myself. Maybe Lauren really hadn't noticed. Maybe AI software had done something bizarre. Maybe deleting the original was careless but innocent. Maybe Sophie had misunderstood. Maybe I was allowing one strange picture to poison my own thoughts. By bedtime, I had almost convinced myself to let it go. Almost. The following afternoon, I visited my friend Carol for coffee. We'd known each other for over 30 years. She noticed something was bothering me before I even sat down. "Barbara." "What? You've got your worried face." "I have a worried face." "Oh yes. What does it look like? Like you're trying to solve a crossword puzzle without enough letters." Despite everything, I laughed. Then I showed her the picture. She studied it. "Beautiful." "It is." She looked again, then looked at me. "Where are you?" "I was hoping you'd ask." I explained everything. The reunion, the editing, Sophie's question, Lauren's explanation, David believing her. Carol listened without interrupting. Finally, she asked one question. "Has Lauren ever made you doubt yourself before?" I opened my mouth, then stopped. I remembered the holidays, the seating arrangements, the social media pictures, the matching pajamas, the tiny moments I'd dismissed. "I don't know." Carol nodded slowly. "Sometimes manipulation isn't loud." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes it's just enough to make you question what your own eyes saw." Her words stayed with me during the drive home. That evening, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Lauren. "Sorry again about the picture. AI can be so weird these days." Just one smiling emoji, nothing else. No original, no apology, no offer to fix it, no new version including me. I stared at that smiling face on my screen. For the first time, something about it felt rehearsed, and somewhere deep inside me, the tiny voice I'd been trying so hard to ignore whispered one frightening thought. If it really had been an accident, why was Lauren working so hard to make me stop asking questions? 2 days later, Sophie came to spend the weekend with Michael and me. Those weekends had become a tradition long before she started elementary school. Lauren usually dropped her off Saturday morning and picked her up Sunday evening. Nothing seemed unusual when Lauren pulled into our driveway. She smiled through the open car window. "Thanks again for taking her. You know we love having her." "I know." She leaned toward the back seat. "Be good for Grandma." "I always am," Sophie answered proudly. Lauren laughed. "I'll see you tomorrow." Within seconds, her SUV disappeared down the street. Sophie grabbed my hand before we even reached the front porch. "Can we bake cookies?" "Of course." "And read books?" "Absolutely." "And look at pictures?" That last request caught my attention. "You want to look at pictures?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I like the old ones." I smiled. "I think we can manage that." The morning passed peacefully. We mixed chocolate chip cookie dough. Michael pretended to steal pieces whenever Sophie wasn't looking. She always caught him. "Grandpa." "What?" You ate another one. I have no idea what you're talking about. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped the wooden spoon. Watching her laugh made everything else disappear for a little while, at least until after lunch. We carried one of the large photo albums into the living room. It was heavy enough that Sophie insisted on helping. Together, we placed it on the coffee table. This one is from when Daddy was little. Her eyes lit up. I love baby Daddy. We opened the album. The pages smelled faintly of old paper and photo adhesive. Every picture brought another question. Was Daddy scared of swimming? A little. Did Grandpa really have hair? Michael looked offended. I still have hair. Not as much. I've noticed. She giggled. Several pages later, we reached more recent years. Birthdays, Christmas, family vacations. Then the reunion section. I hadn't printed this year's photographs yet. Only previous reunions filled those pages. Sophie pointed at one picture from 3 summers ago. There you are. I smiled. Yes. She pointed at another. And there. Then another. And there too. Finally, she looked up at me. You were always next to Grandpa. I usually was. She frowned thoughtfully. That's why the new one feels weird. I stayed quiet. She turned another page. Then suddenly she said something that made my stomach tighten. I liked the first picture better. What first picture? The one Mommy had. I looked at her carefully. What do you mean, the first one? I don't understand. She leaned closer as if sharing a secret. When Mommy was fixing it. My heartbeat slowed. I tried very hard to keep my voice calm. You saw Mommy fixing the reunion picture. She nodded. Uh-huh. The night after the picnic. I didn't interrupt. Children tell stories best when adults don't rush them. She was sitting on the couch with her iPad. Okay. I wanted to watch cartoons. So, you sat with her. Yes. What was Mommy doing? She kept touching the picture. Did she say anything? Sophie shrugged. I don't remember. I forced myself not to ask too quickly. What did you see? She pointed toward one of the reunion photographs in the album. Everybody. And you. I swallowed. So, I was in the first picture? Of course. Her answer came so naturally that tears almost reached my eyes. Children don't rehearse honesty. They simply tell what they remember. What happened next? Mommy kept doing this. Sophie rubbed her finger across the picture as though wiping away a drawing. Like erasing? Yes. Once, no. She shook her head. Lots. My pulse began racing. Lots. She kept saying. Sophie stopped. What did she say? I forgot. It's okay. No. She tapped her forehead. I'm thinking. Michael quietly entered the room carrying lemonade. One look at my face told him something important was happening. He sat silently without interrupting. Sophie suddenly smiled. I remember? What did Mommy say? She said. The little girl looked toward the ceiling as if repeating exact words. No, that doesn't look right. I exchanged a quick glance with Michael. What happened then? She pushed more buttons. And then she said. Sophie paused again. Almost. I could hardly breathe. What happened after that? She erased more. Uh-huh. Did she erase anything else? I don't know. What happened when she finished? Sophie smiled proudly because she'd remembered another detail. She clapped. My chest tightened. She clapped and smiled. What did she say? Sophie answered without hesitation. Now it finally looks like my family. Silence filled the room. Not ordinary silence. The kind that arrives when every person realizes something important at exactly the same moment. Michael slowly set his glass on the table. Neither of us spoke. Sophie looked confused. What? I forced a smile. Nothing, sweetheart. Did I say something wrong? No. You look sad. I pulled her gently into my lap. You didn't do anything wrong. She wrapped her arms around my neck. I love you. I love you too. More than you'll ever know. A few minutes later, Michael suggested taking Sophie outside to feed the birds. She happily skipped toward the backyard. As soon as the door closed behind them, Michael turned toward me. Barbara? I know. That's not AI. No. She watched Lauren erase you. I know. Michael sat down slowly. And Lauren celebrated when she finished. I stared at the family album still lying open before me. One sentence echoed again and again inside my mind. Now it finally looks like my family? Not our family. My family. The difference suddenly felt enormous. I closed the album. I still don't understand. What? Why? Michael nodded. I don't either. But this wasn't an accident. No, it couldn't have been. That evening, while Sophie colored pictures at the kitchen table, I watched her from across the room. She hummed softly to herself, completely unaware that she'd just changed everything. Children don't lie well, especially not 7-year-olds. She hadn't been trying to expose anyone. She simply remembered what she'd seen and what she'd heard. After dinner, Sophie drew a family picture using crayons. She handed it to me proudly. There. I smiled. It's beautiful. Every member of the family stood together holding hands. Grandpa, Daddy, Mommy, Sophie, and me, right in the middle. She looked at her drawing, then asked one innocent question. Grandma? Yes. Can pictures tell lies? I felt tears sting my eyes. I kissed the top of her head before answering. Sometimes, I whispered, but people eventually tell the truth. I prayed I was right, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove that I belonged in a photograph. I was trying to understand why someone wanted my granddaughter to grow up believing I never belonged there in the first place. After Sophie went home, I couldn't stop thinking about one sentence. Now, it finally looks like my family. The words echoed in my mind from morning until night. Not because they were loud, because they quietly explained something I had refused to see for years. Michael found me sitting on the porch with a cup of tea. You've been thinking. I have? What did you figure out? I don't think the picture was the beginning. He nodded slowly. I've been wondering the same thing. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't planned to do. I opened Facebook. Normally, I barely used social media. I posted birthday wishes, commented on family milestones. That was about it. Lauren, however, loved documenting every holiday online. I clicked through years of her albums. Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, birthdays, vacations. At first, nothing looked unusual. Smiling faces, decorated tables, happy children. Then I began looking more carefully. One Christmas album had 23 pictures. I appeared in exactly one. Another Thanksgiving. 31 photographs. Not one included me. Yet I remembered spending the entire day there. Cooking, serving, cleaning, holding Sophie while everyone else ate dessert. I should have been everywhere. Instead, I barely existed. I kept scrolling. 4th of July. Everyone posed around the grill. Michael stood beside David. Lauren smiled at the camera. Sophie held a sparkler. I wasn't there, but I clearly remembered taking that picture. Of course I wasn't in it. I had been behind the camera. That one made sense. Then came another photograph. The whole family sat around the picnic table. I frowned. I remembered that moment perfectly. I had been sitting directly beside Michael. Yet in Lauren's post, someone had cropped the left side, only enough to remove me, not enough to affect anyone else. I enlarged the image. The crop wasn't accidental, it was precise. My heartbeat quickened. Maybe once was coincidence. Twice perhaps, but over and over again. That became much harder to explain. Michael walked over carrying his reading glasses. "What are you looking at?" I handed him my phone. He spent several minutes scrolling, then quietly said, "I noticed this years ago." I looked up. "You did?" "I just never knew how to bring it up." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because every time I hinted at it, you defended Lauren." He was right, every single time. I had, because I believed families deserved the benefit of the doubt, maybe too much. Michael pointed toward another picture. "Look." It showed Mother's Day brunch from 2 years earlier. Lauren stood in the center holding flowers. The caption read, "Feeling grateful to celebrate Mother's Day with my beautiful family." There were 7 people in the picture, not me. I remembered that brunch vividly. I'd arrived 30 minutes early to help decorate. Then I spent an hour washing dishes afterward. Yet, according to that photograph, I had never been there. A strange feeling settled over me. Not anger, recognition, like finishing a puzzle after searching for the missing pieces. Every little moment suddenly connected. I remembered another Thanksgiving. Lauren insisted everyone sit in assigned seats. David beside her. Sophie beside David. I ended up beside relatives I'd barely spoken to all afternoon. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, it felt different. Another memory surfaced. Sophie's 6th birthday. Family gathered for cake. Lauren called everyone together for pictures. Parents first, then grandparents later. The second group photo never happened. I hadn't questioned it. Children became distracted. The party moved on. I smiled anyway. Another memory? Christmas morning? Matching pajamas for everyone? Mine, the wrong color. "The store ran out," Lauren had explained. At the time, I believed her. Now I wondered, had they really, or had she simply wanted me to look different? Another. Labor Day barbecue? Family portrait on the deck? Lauren asked, "Barbara, could you hold the drinks for 1 second?" By the time I returned, the picture had already been taken. She apologized immediately. "We'll take another." We never did. Each memory alone seemed harmless. Tiny, forgettable. But together, they painted a picture I could no longer ignore. Someone hadn't erased me once. Someone had been quietly shrinking my place inside the family for years. Not loudly, not dramatically. One small moment at a time. That realization hurt far more than the edited photograph, because it meant I had been watching it happen without seeing it. The following Friday, Michael and I attended Sophie's school music performance. Parents and grandparents filled the auditorium. Lauren waved when she saw us. Everything appeared perfectly normal. After the concert, Sophie ran straight into my arms. "Grandma, you were wonderful. I saw you clapping." "I was the loudest one," she giggled. Lauren walked over carrying flowers. "She did great, didn't she?" "She certainly did." For a brief moment, everything felt ordinary again, until another parent approached. "Oh, Lauren." The woman smiled warmly. You always post the cutest family pictures. Lauren laughed. Thank you. I loved that reunion portrait. So did I. The woman looked at me politely. I don't think we've met. Lauren answered before I could. This is David's mom. Not my mother-in-law. Not Sophie's grandmother. Just David's mom. It sounded like such a tiny difference, but somehow it created distance. The other woman smiled kindly. Oh, nice to meet you. You too. The conversation ended. Lauren never seemed to notice. Or perhaps she did. Driving home, Michael broke the silence. Did you hear that? I did. Does she ever introduce you as family anymore? I searched my memory. At neighborhood parties, church dinners, school events, she usually didn't. She introduced Michael as David's father, me as David's mother. Almost as though we belonged to the previous generation, not the current family. That night, I opened another old photo album. This one held pictures from before Lauren entered our lives. Birthday parties, camping trips, simple Sunday dinners. Nobody competed for the center. Nobody worried who stood where. We simply stood together. I closed the album and leaned back in my chair. For the first time since all this began, I realized the edited photograph hadn't created my pain. It had simply exposed it. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Well, technically from Lauren's phone. It read, Grandma, I drew another family picture today. Attached was a photo. 5 stick figures, 1 little girl, 1 daddy, 1 mommy, 1 grandpa, 1 grandma, all holding hands. Above them, Sophie had written in crooked 7-year-old handwriting, Nobody gets erased. I stared at those 4 words for a very long time. Children often understand kindness better than adults. But another sentence soon followed, probably typed by Lauren this time. Thanks again for having Sophie last weekend. She loves spending time with you. I looked from Lauren's message, back to Sophie's drawing. 2 completely different voices, one trying to keep peace, the other quietly telling the truth. And for the first time, I wondered if Sophie had noticed much more than any of us realized. Because children hear conversations adults think they've forgotten, and I had a feeling. She wasn't finished telling me what she'd seen. I thought I had seen the worst of it. I was wrong. The following Monday, I decided to reorganize the storage room. It wasn't really about cleaning. I needed something to do besides think. Whenever life became overwhelming, I sorted photographs. It always calmed me. Our storage room sat beneath the stairs. Metal shelves lined one wall. Plastic bins filled with Christmas decorations covered another. The highest shelf held nearly 50 photo albums, each one labeled by year. Michael appeared in the doorway carrying an empty box. I figured you'd end up down here. You know me too well. He smiled. When you're upset, you organize. It's cheaper than therapy. He laughed quietly. I'll help. Together we carried several albums into the living room. I began with older years. Everything looked normal. Then I reached an album from 6 years earlier. Something caught my attention immediately. An empty photo sleeve. That was strange. I never left empty spaces. Every photograph had its place. I looked closer. Tiny adhesive marks remained where a picture had once been. Someone had removed it, carefully. I frowned. Michael. He looked over. What? Do you remember this album? A little. There used to be a picture here. He leaned closer. I think you're right. I flipped another page, another empty sleeve, then another. 3 missing photographs, all removed cleanly, no torn paper, no damaged pages. Whoever took them had done it intentionally. My stomach tightened. I don't remember taking these out. Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he quietly walked toward the bookshelf where we kept our digital backup folders. A few moments later, he returned carrying an external hard drive. "You backed up everything." "I know. Let's check." I connected the drive to my laptop. Thousands of family pictures appeared. Folders organized by year, month, holiday, exactly the way I'd always arranged them. I opened the folder matching the album. There they were, the missing photographs. Relief washed over me. At least they still existed digitally. Then I opened the first image. It showed our family at Thanksgiving. Lauren stood beside David, Michael beside me. Sophie sat on my lap. Perfectly ordinary. Why would anyone remove that picture? The second photograph answered nothing. Christmas morning, everyone smiling, again, nothing unusual. The third, a birthday party, still nothing. Michael stared at the screen. "I don't understand." "Neither do I." Then another memory surfaced. I remember lending these albums to Lauren. When, a few years ago. "What for?" "She said she wanted to scan some old pictures for a family slideshow." Michael's expression changed. "She borrowed several." I forgot. "So did I." I suddenly remembered carrying 3 albums to her car. She'd thanked me repeatedly, promised to return them in a few days. At the time, nothing seemed strange. I continued searching. Another album, another empty sleeve, then another. By the end of the afternoon, we'd found 11 missing printed photographs, not damaged, not faded, removed. Every single one included me. I sat back slowly. "No." Michael looked at me. "What? This can't be random." He quietly nodded. "I know." I opened another digital folder. Every missing printed photograph still existed on my computer. Except one. The file wasn't there. I searched again. Nothing. Maybe I'd accidentally moved it. I checked another folder. Nothing. Finally, I searched the entire hard drive. No results. That photograph had disappeared digitally too. A chill ran through me. "Michael." He came closer. "This one is gone." He looked at the empty search results. "That's impossible. I backed up everything." "You always did. I never deleted photographs." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Could the file be corrupted?" "I don't think so." I kept searching. Nothing. One missing file became 3. Then 5. Not every missing print had vanished digitally, but enough had. Enough to frighten me. That evening, I pulled out a cardboard box labeled Loose Photos. Inside were hundreds of pictures waiting to be organized. I searched carefully. Halfway through the box, I found something unexpected. An empty photo envelope. My handwriting covered the front. Garcia Family Reunion, Originals, Originals. I opened it. Empty. Absolutely empty. I remembered exactly what had been inside. The untouched prints from years ago. I always kept originals separate from edited copies. Now, someone had removed everyone. Michael leaned against the doorway. "You found something." I showed him the envelope. His face darkened. "I've seen that before." "When?" I couldn't remember until now. He rubbed his forehead. "A few years ago." "What happened?" "Lauren asked where you kept the original photographs." My heart skipped. "She did." "You were grocery shopping." "I don't remember that." I told her. "You showed her?" "I didn't think it mattered." "It didn't. She said she wanted to surprise you by organizing everything." I closed my eyes. Organizing, the exact word she'd used years earlier. Not borrowing, not scanning. Organizing. Michael sighed heavily. "I should have told you." You couldn't have known. No. But I should have remembered. Neither of us spoke. For nearly a minute, the only sound came from the ticking clock above the fireplace. Finally, Michael broke the silence. Barbara? What? How many years do you think this has been happening? I looked around the room. Albums, boxes, shelves, memories. I don't know. But longer than we realized. That realization hurt more than anything else, because it meant this wasn't one impulsive decision after the reunion. It was a pattern. Slow, patient, invisible. One missing picture, then another. Tiny changes that nobody noticed because nobody expected to look. Later that night, I made a list. Missing Thanksgiving photos, missing Christmas prints, missing birthday pictures, missing reunion originals. Every item ended with the same question. Why nothing connected them except one detail? Me. Every removed photograph featured me prominently. Not Michael, not David, not Sophie, only me. Near midnight, I walked into the hallway where our framed photographs hung. I counted them. 22 frames. One empty hook. I'd forgotten about that. There used to be a picture there. Michael appeared behind me. The lake cabin? Yes. Where did it go? I don't know. Then he whispered something that made my blood run cold. I think Lauren took that one too. I turned toward him. Why, I remember she said the frame matched her living room. I blinked. And she asked if she could borrow it. Did she? I honestly don't remember her bringing it back. Neither did I. For years, I'd assumed I had simply packed it away somewhere. Now, I wasn't so sure. I looked around our hallway. For the first time in decades, it no longer felt complete. Not because pictures were missing, because pieces of our history had quietly disappeared while we were busy trusting the people we loved. As I turned off the hallway light, one thought settled firmly in my mind. Someone hadn't just been editing photographs. Someone had been rewriting our family's history, and if they had already erased pieces of the past, how far would they go to erase someone from the future? For 3 days, I stared at the notebook lying on my kitchen table. Inside, it was a list I never imagined I would make. Missing photographs, missing originals, missing digital files. Holidays where I had quietly disappeared. Tiny moments that no longer felt tiny. Every page led to the same name. Lauren. I didn't want to believe it. More importantly, I didn't want to force my son to believe it. But avoiding the truth had never protected anyone. It had only protected lies. On Thursday morning, I called David. Hi, Mom. Do you have time to stop by this evening? His voice immediately changed. Is everything okay? I'd rather talk in person. A brief silence followed. I'll come after work. Thank you. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Michael walked into the kitchen. He's coming. At 6. Michael nodded. No yelling. I won't. No blaming. I won't. Just facts. I looked at the notebook. Just facts. At exactly 6 o'clock, David pulled into the driveway. He looked tired. His tie hung loosely around his neck. As soon as he walked inside, he hugged me. That hug almost changed my mind. Almost. I was worried, he admitted. I know. What's going on? Sit down. Michael joined us at the dining room table. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, I slid the notebook toward David. What's this, my notes? He looked confused. For what? I need you to see something. He opened the first page. Missing reunion original. Missing Christmas photo. Missing Thanksgiving print. He frowned. I don't understand. I stood and retrieved several albums from the bookshelf. One by one, I placed them on the table. This album has 3 empty sleeves. He flipped through it. So, they weren't always empty. I don't remember. I do. I opened another album. This one has 4. Another. 2. Another. 5. David looked from one album to another, then back at me. Pictures get lost. I thought so too. I handed him my laptop. Now compare them. He opened the digital folders. Some pictures still existed, others didn't. He became noticeably quieter. Michael finally spoke. Lauren borrowed these albums. David looked up. So, to organize them? Yes. And after she returned them, the pictures were gone. David sighed. You're making assumptions. I know how it sounds. Mom. He rubbed his forehead. You're connecting dots that may not even belong together. I understand why you think that. No. He looked directly at me. I think you're hurting. I am. And I think that pain is making ordinary things seem suspicious. Those words landed harder than he realized. Because only days earlier, I had said almost the same thing to myself. I reached into another box. I want to show you something else. I handed him my phone. Lauren's Facebook albums appeared. He scrolled quietly. What am I looking for? Look carefully. He enlarged one picture, then another, then another. I watched his expression. At first, nothing. Then he paused. Huh. What? You aren't in many of these? No. He kept scrolling. Another pause. This one's cropped. Yes? He continued. This one too. Another. And this one. For a brief moment, I thought I had reached him. Then he leaned back. But that doesn't prove anything. My heart sank. David, Mom's social media isn't real life? I know. Lauren probably just picked the pictures she liked. The ones without me? He sighed heavily. I don't know. Neither do I. But I do know I was there. He folded his arms. So what are you saying? The question hung between us. I answered carefully. I think Lauren has been removing me from family memories. He immediately shook his head. No. I'm not asking you to believe me. It sounds impossible. I know. It sounds paranoid. I know. He stood up and began pacing. My wife is not trying to erase you. I'm telling you what I've found. No. He pointed toward the albums. You're telling me what you think. Michael quietly spoke. David? What? I've noticed it too. David turned. You? Yes. For years. Why didn't either of you say anything? Michael looked tired. Because we hoped we were wrong. David laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because he didn't know what else to do. This is unbelievable. I wish it were. He looked toward me again. So what exactly do you expect me to do? I don't know. You want me to accuse my wife. I want you to ask questions. I have. No, you've assumed every answer before asking. He shook his head. You don't understand. Then help me. He looked away. Finally, he admitted something quietly. Lauren has always felt like she had to prove herself. I know. She worries people compare her. I never compared her. I know. But maybe she thinks you do. I remained silent. He continued. She's worked hard to become part of this family. I welcomed her. I know you did. Then why does it feel like she's pushing me out? David didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the family albums spread across the table. His eyes rested on one empty photo sleeve, then another, then another. For just a second, I thought I saw doubt, real doubt, but it disappeared almost immediately. He closed the album. I'm sorry. For what? I can't accuse Lauren based on this. I'm not asking you to accuse her. Then what? I need my son to believe what I'm telling him. His voice softened. I believe that you believe it. Those words shattered something inside me. Not because he intended them to, because they meant he believed I was mistaken. Not that I was lying. Not that I was cruel. Simply wrong. I looked down at my hands. Suddenly they seemed much older than they had the day before. I've never lied to you. I know. I've never tried to come between your marriage. I know. I've loved Lauren like my own daughter. I know. So why is it easier to believe I'm imagining this than to believe something might actually be wrong? He didn't answer, because he couldn't. After another long silence, he picked up his car keys. I should go. I nodded. At the front door, he hugged me again. Longer this time. I love you, Mom. I love you too. I'll think about everything. I hope you do. He left. His car disappeared down the street. I remained standing on the porch until it was completely out of sight. Michael quietly joined me. You okay? I shook my head. No. You lost him? I wiped away a tear. No. I just feel farther away from him than I've ever been. Michael slipped his arm around my shoulders. We're not finished. No. We're closer than we've ever been. I looked toward the empty driveway. I don't know. He squeezed my hand. I do. That night, I carried every album back to the bookshelf. Not because I was giving up, because I had shown my son everything I had. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. But I also knew something David didn't. Children don't invent detailed memories. Photographs don't remove themselves. Original files don't disappear by accident. Sooner or later, the truth would have to reveal itself. The only question was, how much more of our family would break before it did? After David left that evening, I told myself I would stop searching. I had shown him everything. The missing photographs, the empty sleeves, the edited family portrait, Sophie's innocent memories. If none of that convinced him nothing, I did would. Life, however, had other plans. 4 days later, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. It was David. His voice sounded rushed. Mom, are you home? Yes. I'm coming over. Is everything all right? I don't know. Before I could ask another question, he hung up. Michael looked at me. That didn't sound good. No. 20 minutes later, David's truck pulled into the driveway. He jumped out before the engine even stopped. In his hands was a pink tablet covered with cartoon stickers. Sophie's. He barely said hello before walking inside. Did Sophie leave this here last weekend? I looked at the tablet. No. He frowned. She must have packed the wrong one. What happened? He rubbed the back of his neck. Lauren's been looking everywhere for it. Michael closed the front door behind him. Can she not use another device? David hesitated. Apparently, that one was syncing some family photos. The words caught my attention. Family photos? Yeah. He shrugged. I don't really know. I told Lauren I'd bring it home. He pressed the power button. Nothing happened. The battery's dead. I have the charger, I said. A few minutes later, the tablet powered on. The lock screen showed Sophie hugging a golden retriever at the park. David smiled. She changes that picture every week. Then he entered the passcode. Without thinking, 4 simple numbers. The home screen appeared. "I'll text Lauren and tell her I found it." He opened the messaging app. Before he could type anything, a notification appeared across the top. Photos sync complete. David tapped it automatically. A gallery opened. Vacation pictures, school projects, birthday cakes. Nothing unusual. He scrolled absent-mindedly, then stopped. What? I don't remember this folder. The folder was named Family Edit Michael, and I exchanged a glance. David frowned. Maybe it's something Sophie made. He tapped it. The screen filled with image thumbnails, dozens of them. Most were copies of the reunion photograph. At first glance, they looked identical. Then David opened the first one. The original. Every single family member stood exactly where I remembered. There I was, standing beside Michael, smiling. My heart skipped. "I knew it," I whispered. David didn't answer. He opened the second image. This time, something had changed. The edge of my sleeve looked slightly blurred. He opened another. Part of my arm had disappeared. Another. Half my body was gone. Another. Only my shoulder remained. Another. I had vanished completely. The grass behind me had replaced me. Perfectly. The exact image Lauren had posted in the family chat. Nobody spoke. David's breathing became noticeably heavier. He continued opening files. There weren't just 2 versions, or 3, there were 12. Each one showed another stage of the editing process. Version 1, original. Version 2, minor edits. Version 3, my left arm removed. Version 4, half my body erased. Version 5, background reconstructed. Version 6, shadows corrected. Version 7, tree branches blended. Version 8, color adjustments. Version 9, grass repaired. Version 10, final touch-ups. Version 11, color enhancement. Version 12, final family portrait. Every step had been saved, every decision documented, every brushstroke intentional. David slowly lowered the tablet. "No." He picked it up again. "There has to be another explanation." His voice sounded almost desperate. "There has to be." He opened another folder. Inside sat screenshots from the editing app. Brush settings, AI masking, object removal tools, layer history. One screenshot displayed the software timeline. Each edit had been manually confirmed. Remove object, accept. Blend background, accept. Repair edges, accept. No accident, no software glitch, no artificial intelligence mistake, only deliberate choices. David sank into the nearest chair. His face had gone pale. "I told you?" The words escaped my mouth before I could stop them. Immediately, I regretted saying them. This wasn't the moment to prove I had been right. This was the moment my son realized someone he loved had lied to him. He whispered to himself, "She lied." Michael remained unusually calm. "What are you seeing?" David pointed silently. "The original. And she saved every version." He opened the editing history once more. The timestamp stretched across nearly 2 hours. 2 hours? Lauren hadn't pressed one accidental button. She had spent almost 2 hours removing me from our family. David covered his face with both hands. "Oh my God!" I had imagined this moment many times. I thought I would feel relief, vindication, justice. Instead, all I felt was sadness, because the truth had finally arrived, and it was hurting my son even more than it had hurt me. After several minutes, David spoke, almost in a whisper. "I called you paranoid." I didn't answer. "I told you technology made mistakes." Silence. I laughed. I reached across the table and gently placed my hand over his. "You didn't know. I should have listened. You trusted your wife." "I trusted the wrong person." His voice cracked. For the first time since he was a little boy, I saw tears forming in his eyes. Michael quietly asked, "Does Lauren know these files are still here?" David shook his head. "I don't think so." He continued scrolling. Another file appeared. This one wasn't an image. It was a screen recording. He hesitated, then pressed play. The recording showed Lauren editing the photograph from beginning to end. No face appeared, only her hands. The stylus moved carefully across the screen. Zoom in, select, erase, blend, undo. Try again, erase again. At one point, she sighed in frustration. "Still looks obvious," then continued working. Near the end of the recording, she leaned back. Although only her voice could be heard, every word was crystal clear. "There." A pause. "That's much better." Another pause. "Now it finally looks like my family." The recording ended. The room fell silent. Nobody needed Sophie's memory anymore. Nobody needed my suspicions. Nobody needed missing photographs. Lauren had recorded herself doing it. David stared at the blank screen. His shoulders trembled. "I don't even know who she is anymore." Neither did I. But one question still remained. Why not how? Not whether. Why? Why would someone spend years quietly removing another person from family memories? Why me? Why photographs? Why now? David suddenly stood. "I have to go home." Michael looked up. "What are you going to do?" His answer came immediately. "I'm going to ask my wife one question." "What?" He picked up the tablet. His eyes no longer showed confusion, only heartbreak. "I'm going to ask her why she wanted my daughter to grow up believing her grandmother was never there." He walked toward the front door. Before leaving, he turned back to me. "I'm sorry, Mom." I nodded through tears. "I know." He left carrying the tablet, carrying the evidence, carrying the truth. As his truck disappeared down the street, Michael wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "Everything changes now." I watched the rain fall across the empty driveway. "No," I whispered. "Now." The real story begins. I didn't hear from David for almost 24 hours. It felt like the longest day of my life. I wasn't worried that he wouldn't believe me anymore. That part was over. I was worried about what the truth would do to him. Every marriage carries hidden cracks. Some couples repair them. Others spend years pretending they aren't there. I had no idea which path David and Lauren would take. Late Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. It was David. His voice sounded exhausted. "Mom, are you okay?" "No." He paused. "Can I come over?" "Of course." 30 minutes later, he walked through our front door. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His shoulders drooped. Without saying a word, he sat at our kitchen table. Michael quietly placed a cup of coffee in front of him. "Thanks." Nobody rushed him. Eventually he spoke. "I confronted Lauren." I folded my hands together. "What happened?" "At first." He gave a bitter laugh. "She denied everything. Even with the video. I didn't show her the video right away." "What did she say?" "She claimed the software glitched." I closed my eyes. "The same story?" "Yes." He stared into his coffee. "Then I asked for the original picture. And she said she accidentally deleted it." I already knew that answer. I asked again. "What happened?" "She became angry." He looked at me. Really angry. That surprised me. Lauren had always seemed calm, controlled, polite. I've never seen her like that. "What did she say?" He sighed. "She asked why I suddenly didn't trust her." Classic. The conversation had shifted away from what she did. toward how he reacted. "When did you show her the tablet?" His expression hardened. "After that." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, opened a video. "I recorded part of the conversation." He pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the kitchen. "You went through my tablet," David answered calmly. "Sophie left it at Mom's house." "You invaded my privacy." I opened the photo folder. Silence. Then Lauren spoke quietly. "You weren't supposed to see that." Those 6 words changed everything. No denial, no confusion, only regret that she had been caught. The recording continued. David asked, "Why?" A long silence followed, nearly 30 seconds. Finally, Lauren whispered, "Because I was tired." "Tired of what?" "Tired of always being second." David sounded confused. "Second to who?" She laughed, not happily, bitterly. "Your mother." I looked at Michael. Neither of us moved. Lauren continued, "No matter what I did, everyone still went to Barbara. For recipes, for advice, for family history, for holidays, for birthdays, for everything." David answered quietly, "She's my mother." "I know. And she's Sophie's grandmother." "I know." "So what did you expect?" Lauren's voice cracked. "I wanted someone to need me." The recording ended there. David placed the phone face down. I asked her again, "What? Why the photographs?" His eyes filled with tears. I wasn't prepared for her answer. I took a slow breath. "What did she say?" He looked directly at me. "She said every picture reminded her that she would never be the heart of our family." The room fell silent. Michael whispered, "My God." David continued. "She said every time she looked at old photographs, she saw you. You holding Sophie. You hosting holidays. You surrounded by everyone." I listened without interrupting. "She believed," he swallowed hard, "that there was no room for 2 matriarchs." That word hit me unexpectedly. Matriarch. I had never called myself that, never wanted to. I had simply been a wife, a mother, a grandmother, nothing more. David rubbed his eyes. I asked if she hated you. "What did she say?" "No." He shook his head. "She said she hated feeling invisible." Another long silence settled over us. Finally, I asked, "Did she apologize?" He nodded slowly. "Eventually." "But it didn't sound like an apology." "What do you mean? It sounded like an explanation." That difference mattered. An explanation tells us why. An apology accepts responsibility. The two are not the same. David continued. "She admitted editing the reunion picture." "Did she admit removing the others?" "Yes." My heart sank. "All of them?" "Almost." He leaned back. "She said every time she removed one, it became easier." She convinced herself nobody would notice. I remembered the empty sleeves, the cropped photographs, the missing originals. Tiny choices repeated over years. Exactly as we'd feared. Then she said something else. "What?" David stared out the window. "She admitted she was afraid Sophie loved you more." I blinked. "What?" "She said every time Sophie wanted to spend weekends here, she felt replaced." Tears filled my eyes. I had never tried to replace anyone. Never. If anything, I'd always encouraged Sophie to appreciate her mother. David looked devastated. I asked why she never told me. "What did she say?" "She was ashamed." He gave another tired laugh. "And somehow, instead of asking for help, she started deleting photographs." The logic made no sense. Yet emotional pain rarely follows logic. I quietly asked, "Where is she now?" "At home. Alone." She wanted me to leave. "What about Sophie?" "She's staying with Lauren's sister tonight." I nodded. Probably for the best. Children shouldn't witness conversations like that. David reached across the table and took my hand. "I owe you an apology." "You don't." "I do. I called you paranoid. You were protecting your marriage. I was refusing to protect my mother." His voice broke. "I failed you." I squeezed his hand. "No. You trusted someone you loved. I ignored you. You didn't know." "I should have." I looked at the young man sitting across from me. For a brief moment, he looked exactly like the little boy who used to come home from school after making a mistake. Not because he'd been cruel, because he hated disappointing someone he loved. I smiled gently. "I forgave you before you walked through that door." He lowered his head. "I don't know what happens now." Neither did I, but I knew one thing. Truth had finally entered our family. Painfully, unexpectedly, but honestly, and no healing could ever begin until that happened. Before David left, he asked one final question. "Mom." "Yes." "Do you think someone can come back from this?" I thought for a long time before answering. Finally, I said, "I think people can change. But only after they stop defending what they did." He nodded quietly. As he walked toward the door, I realized something. For the first time since all of this began, the question was no longer whether Lauren had erased me. The evidence answered that. The real question now was much harder. Could a family ever learn to trust someone again? After discovering she had spent years quietly rewriting their memories. After David left, I sat in silence for a long time. For days, I had imagined what I would say if Lauren ever admitted the truth. I thought I would be angry. I thought I would demand answers. Instead, I felt tired. Very tired. The following Tuesday, David called again. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Lauren wants to see you." I closed my eyes. "Does she?" "She asked if you'll meet her." I didn't answer immediately. Michael watched me from across the room. Finally, I asked, "Why now?" "Because she says she's finally ready to stop lying." That sentence stayed with me. Not ready to apologize, not ready to explain, ready to stop lying. "I'll come," I said quietly. The meeting took place at David's house. Sophie was spending the afternoon with Lauren's sister. David thought it would be better if she wasn't there. When Michael and I arrived, Lauren was already sitting at the dining room table. She looked completely different. No makeup, hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes. For the first time since I had known her, she didn't look polished. She looked broken. She stood as we walked in. "Barbara." I nodded politely. "Lauren." Nobody hugged. Nobody smiled. David quietly pulled out 4 chairs. The 4 of us sat down. For nearly a minute, no one spoke. Finally, Lauren broke the silence. "I've rehearsed this conversation 100 times. Her voice trembled. "And none of those versions sounded honest?" She looked directly at me. "So I'm just going to tell you the truth." I folded my hands. "I'm listening." She took a slow breath. "I didn't erase you because I hated you." Another pause. "I erased you because I hated who I became whenever you were around." I remained silent. She continued. "When David and I first got married, I admired you. I really did. I wanted to be like you. You always knew everyone's birthdays. You remembered family recipes. You could make Sophie stop crying in 30 seconds. You made every holiday feel warm. She wiped away a tear. I kept thinking, if I tried hard enough, one day I'd become that person. She laughed bitterly. But every family gathering reminded me I wasn't. David quietly lowered his head. Lauren continued. Whenever Sophie fell and scraped her knee, she wanted Grandma. When Thanksgiving came, everyone asked Barbara what recipe she used. When Christmas decorations went up, they asked Barbara where everything belonged. When family stories were told, everyone looked at Barbara. She swallowed hard. I started believing there wasn't any room left for me. I spoke for the first time. There was always room. I know that now. No, there always was. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I couldn't see it. She looked toward David. I never told you. No. I was embarrassed. So instead, I convinced myself I could create my own place. She looked back at me. First, I cropped photographs. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone. Then I stopped printing certain pictures. Then I removed old ones. Each step became easier. I always found another excuse. She covered her face. I became someone I don't even recognize. The room remained silent. Michael finally spoke. Why didn't you ask for help? Lauren looked up slowly. Because asking for help would have meant admitting I wasn't enough. David quietly whispered, You were always enough. She shook her head. I didn't believe that. Then she surprised all of us. I've been thinking about where that feeling started. She looked out the window. My mother. None of us interrupted. Growing up, my mom compared me to everyone. My older sister. My cousins. The girls next door. There was always someone prettier. Someone smarter. Someone more successful. If I got an A, someone else got 2. If I cooked dinner, my sister cooked better. If I cleaned the house, it wasn't clean enough. She smiled sadly. I spent my entire childhood competing for approval. Her voice became almost a whisper. When I joined this family, I didn't know how to stop competing. The words hurt because they sounded painfully believable, not as an excuse, as an explanation. Lauren looked directly at me. I wasn't competing against you. I was competing against the little voice in my head. The one that kept saying, You'll never matter as much as she does. For the first time, I understood something. Not her actions. Those remained wrong. But the fear underneath them. I remembered all the moments she'd tried so hard to host holidays, to perfect decorations, to control photographs, to make everything appear flawless. Maybe she wasn't chasing perfection. Maybe she was chasing worth. I spoke gently. Lauren. She looked at me. I understand where your pain came from. Fresh tears filled her eyes. But you need to hear something. She nodded. Your childhood explains what happened. It does not excuse what happened. She closed her eyes. I know. You hurt me. I know. You hurt David. I know. You nearly hurt Sophie. She began crying openly. I know. I will regret that for the rest of my life. David finally spoke. I should have noticed. Lauren immediately shook her head. No. I hid it. I lied. I manipulated. You trusted me. He looked exhausted. I also ignored my mother. Lauren turned toward me again. I stole memories from you. No. I tried to. She reached into a large canvas bag resting beside her chair. I brought something. She slowly placed several envelopes on the table. Old photographs, original prints, Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, the missing lake cabin picture. Every missing photograph I'd spent weeks searching for. My hands trembled as I touched them. I kept them. She nodded. I couldn't throw them away. Why not? Because. She smiled sadly. I knew what I was doing was wrong. That answer mattered. She had known. All along. I've also been restoring every digital file. She slid a flash drive across the table. They're all here. Every original. Every backup I deleted. Every version. David stared at the flash drive. You recovered them. I hired someone. I wanted every memory back. Then she looked at me once more. There isn't a single apology big enough for what I did. No, there isn't. But I'm still sorry. The honesty in those words felt different. Not polished, not rehearsed, not defensive, simply broken. As we prepared to leave, Lauren quietly asked one final question. Barbara. Yes. I know I don't deserve forgiveness today. I nodded. Probably not. She accepted that answer. But, she whispered, do you think one day I could earn back your trust? I looked at the photographs spread across the table, then at the woman sitting before me. Finally, I answered. Trust isn't given because someone cries. She nodded. It's rebuilt because someone changes. She quietly wiped away another tear. I'll spend however long it takes. For the first time, I believed she meant it. Whether she could actually do it, only time would tell. The meeting with Lauren stayed in my mind for days. Her tears were real. So was her regret. But I had lived long enough to know something important. Regret is a feeling. Change is a decision. One comes quickly, the other takes time. I wasn't interested in promises anymore. I wanted to see actions. 3 mornings later, someone knocked on our front door. When I opened it, Lauren stood there alone. She wasn't carrying flowers. She wasn't holding a gift basket. Instead, she struggled with 2 large storage boxes. May I come in? I stepped aside. Of course. Michael carried the boxes into the living room. Lauren looked around nervously. I brought everything. What do you mean? She opened the first box. Inside were dozens of framed photographs. My breath caught. The missing lake cabin picture, Christmas portraits, Thanksgiving gatherings, Sophie's first birthday, family vacations. Every frame I had thought was gone forever. I found all of them. She gently lifted one after another onto the coffee table. I'd stored them in our attic. I looked at her. Why, she answered honestly. Because I couldn't bear to throw them away. But I also couldn't bear to look at them. There was no excuse in her voice, only shame. She opened the second box. Albums, the same albums she had borrowed years before. Inside, every empty photo sleeve now held its original photograph. One by one, she had restored them. I carefully turned the pages. Every missing picture had returned to its place, exactly where it belonged. My fingers trembled as I touched them. For weeks, those empty spaces had haunted me. Now they were full again. Lauren quietly stood beside me. I repaired every album. I also had every missing digital file restored. She handed me another flash drive. I hired a recovery specialist. I paid whatever it cost. Michael examined the restored albums. They're complete. Lauren nodded. As complete as I could make them. Then she surprised me again. There's one more thing. She pulled a large envelope from her bag. Inside was an oversized print. The reunion photograph. The original one. Untouched. Every family member smiling together, including me. She laid it gently on the table. I had this professionally printed. I stared at the picture. It felt strangely emotional seeing myself back where I belonged. Not because I needed to be the center. Simply because I had never wanted to disappear. Lauren spoke softly. I'd like this one to replace the fake one. I looked up. It should, she nodded. I've already deleted every edited copy. Then she added, publicly. What do you mean? She reached for her phone. I posted something this morning. She handed it to me. It was a message in our family group chat. Not a private apology, a public confession. I read slowly. I owe everyone an apology. Several weeks ago, I edited our family reunion picture and removed Barbara. I told everyone it was an AI mistake. That was a lie. No software made that decision. I did. Over the past several years, I also removed or altered other family photographs because of my own insecurity. Barbara deserved far better from me. David deserved honesty. Sophie deserved the truth. I cannot undo the pain I caused, but I am restoring every original photograph and taking responsibility for my actions. I'm deeply sorry. The message had dozens of replies underneath. Shock, confusion, support, questions, but no one defended what she had done. For the first time, nobody was living inside the lie anymore. I quietly handed the phone back. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. What made you do it? She looked at me. I kept hiding behind private apologies. I realized I'd embarrassed you publicly. So, I needed to accept responsibility publicly. I respected that, not because it erased the past, because accountability should always be at least as visible as the harm. Just then, the front door burst open. Grandma Sophie, she ran straight toward me. I have a surprise. She wrapped her arms around my waist, then suddenly noticed Lauren standing nearby. She looked between us carefully. Neither of us spoke. Finally, Sophie asked, Are you both okay? Lauren knelt beside her. We're trying to be. Sophie studied both of our faces, then smiled. Good. She disappeared into her backpack, pulled out another drawing. She handed it to me. This one showed 6 people. Grandpa, Grandma, Daddy, Mommy, Sophie. Even their dog. Above them, she'd written in colorful letters, Families fix things together. I laughed through tears. That's beautiful. She looked proudly at Lauren. I made sure nobody disappeared. Lauren closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, they were full of tears. I love that. Sophie climbed onto the couch between us. Children have an incredible gift. They don't pretend nothing happened. But they also don't carry bitterness the way adults do. She simply wanted everyone together again. That afternoon, we sorted photographs for nearly 3 hours. Lauren helped place every restored picture back into its album. She asked before touching anything. She listened more than she spoke. Whenever she made a mistake, she admitted it immediately. No excuses, no explanations, only honesty. At one point, Michael quietly walked into the kitchen to make coffee. He returned, smiling. You know something? What? The house finally feels peaceful again. I looked around, not because every problem had disappeared, because nobody was pretending anymore. Later, as Lauren prepared to leave, she hesitated near the front door. Barbara? Yes. I know forgiveness isn't something I can ask for. I nodded. But... She took a slow breath. Thank you for letting me start putting things back. I smiled gently. Returning photographs is the easy part. I know. The harder part, she finished my sentence quietly, is earning my place back. Yes, she nodded. I'll keep working. As her car disappeared down the street, Michael wrapped an arm around my shoulders. What are you thinking? I looked at the restored albums stacked neatly on the table. I'm thinking, what? Sometimes the hardest thing isn't exposing the truth. It's deciding what to do after everyone finally knows it. Because healing had begun. But trust still had a very long journey ahead. Autumn arrived quietly. The maple trees outside our house turned shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in months, I found myself looking forward instead of constantly looking back. Healing didn't happen overnight. It happened in ordinary moments. One honest conversation, one returned photograph, one kept promise at a time. Lauren never asked me to pretend everything was normal. Instead, she simply showed up. Every Sunday afternoon she called. Not because she needed something, just to check on us. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes, sometimes 20. If the conversation felt awkward, she didn't force it. She accepted it. One afternoon, she asked, Barbara, would you mind teaching me your apple pie recipe? The question made me smile. Months earlier, I might have wondered whether she wanted to impress everyone. Now, her voice sounded different. I'd love to. I'd like to write it down myself this time. You can. The following weekend, she came alone. We spent 3 hours in my kitchen. I showed her how to peel apples without wasting half the fruit, how to keep the crust flaky, how much cinnamon to add. She listened carefully. Every few minutes, she asked another question. Not because she wanted perfection, because she wanted to learn. When the pie finally came out of the oven, she laughed. It doesn't look nearly as good as yours, I smiled. Neither did my first one. She looked surprised. It didn't? No? My mother laughed when she tasted it. What did she say? I smiled at the memory. She said, nobody becomes family by baking one perfect pie. Lauren quietly repeated those words. I like that. So did I. That afternoon felt strangely peaceful. Not because everything had been fixed, because nobody was pretending we hadn't been hurt. Weeks later, David invited everyone to dinner. No holiday, no birthday, just dinner. I think it's time, he said. When Michael and I arrived, I noticed something immediately. The dining table had no assigned seats. Lauren smiled softly. Sit wherever you'd like. Such a tiny detail, yet somehow, it meant everything. Sophie ran toward us carrying crayons. I have a job. What job? You have to help me. With what? Our picture. I laughed. What picture? The new family picture. David looked confused. What new family picture? Sophie smiled proudly. I'm taking one. Lauren looked at her daughter. You planned this. I've been planning it all week. Everyone laughed. After dinner, Sophie marched us into the backyard. The autumn leaves covered the grass like a colorful blanket. She carried a small camera around her neck, one of those simple children's cameras. David smiled. Do you even know how to use that thing? I watched Grandpa. Michael pretended to puff out his chest proudly. Best teacher she ever had. She ignored him. Instead, she began arranging everyone. Daddy, stand here. Grandpa, here. Grandma. She pointed toward the center. I immediately stepped aside. No, sweetheart. I'll stand over here. She frowned. No. Then she looked toward Lauren. Mommy. You stand next to Grandma. For one brief second, nobody moved. Lauren looked at me. I looked back at her. Neither of us knew what to do. Finally, Lauren quietly walked over. She stood beside me. Not in front, not behind. Beside. Sophie smiled with satisfaction. There, David asked. Why did you put them together? Sophie answered as though it were obvious. Because they're both my family. Silence settled over the backyard. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that comes when a child accidentally says exactly what every adult needed to hear. Lauren slowly reached for my hand. She hesitated, giving me every chance to pull away. Instead, I let her hold it, not because all trust had returned, because healing begins with small choices. This was one of them. Sophie lifted the camera. Everybody smile. Then she frowned. Wait. What now? David laughed. She lowered the camera. Nobody stands in front. We adjusted. Nobody hides. Another adjustment. Everybody hold hands. Michael smiled. Anything else, director? Yes. What? She looked around carefully. Make sure nobody disappears. I felt tears filling my eyes. Lauren did too. This time when we smiled, none of us were pretending. Click. The first picture. Click. A second. Click. One more. Just in case. Exactly as we'd always done. Afterward, Sophie ran over to check the pictures. They're perfect. David laughed. Already? Yep. She turned the little camera toward us. The image wasn't sharp. The lighting wasn't professional. Somebody blinked. Michael's jacket looked crooked. One corner was slightly blurry. Technically, it wasn't a very good photograph. Emotionally, it was the most beautiful family picture I'd seen in years. Nobody had been cropped. Nobody had been erased. Nobody had been moved aside. Every person stood exactly where they belonged. Together. Later that evening, we sat around the fire pit in David's backyard. The conversation flowed naturally. No one forced happiness. No one avoided difficult subjects. At one point, Lauren quietly said, I've started seeing a therapist. I looked toward her. Good. I have a lot to work through. We all do. She nodded. I don't ever want Sophie to believe love has to be earned by competing. I smiled gently. Then you're already teaching her something important. David wrapped an arm around Lauren's shoulders, not because everything had been forgotten, because they had both chosen honesty. As Michael and I prepared to leave, Sophie hugged me tightly. Grandma? Yes. Are you happy now? I looked around at my husband, my son, my granddaughter, Lauren, the fire glowing softly behind them. Then I answered honestly, I'm hopeful. She smiled. I think that's even better. On the drive home, Michael reached across the console and squeezed my hand. You know what? This family almost lost itself. I looked out the window at the passing lights. Yes, but we didn't. No, we finally stopped hiding. And sometimes, that is where every real family begins again. Almost a year has passed since the day I opened our family group chat and discovered I had been erased. Sometimes I still think about that moment. Not because I want to relive the pain, because it reminds me how quickly a single image can change the course of a family. Life today looks different. Not perfect, but honest. And after everything we've lived through, I've learned honesty is far more valuable than perfection. The first thing visitors notice when they walk into our home is the hallway. For decades, those walls have held our family's history. Birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, Christmas mornings, fishing trips, first days of school. For a while, every empty space reminded me of what had been stolen. Now, every frame has been restored. The missing lake cabin picture hangs exactly where it used to. The Thanksgiving photograph is back in its album. Every missing memory has found its way home. Not because time erased the hurt, because someone finally chose to repair what she had broken. Lauren kept her promise. She continued therapy. She never missed a session. She never asked us to forget. Instead, she accepted that rebuilding trust would take as long as it needed. Some weeks, she called just to ask how Michael's tomatoes were growing. Other weeks, she invited me over to taste a new recipe. Sometimes she failed. Sometimes old habits appeared. When they did, she admitted them immediately. I caught myself trying to control everything again. That became one of the biggest changes. She no longer hid. David changed too. Not because he became suspicious. Because he learned to listen before dismissing someone else's pain. One evening, he called me. "Mom." "Yes?" "I've been thinking." "About what?" "All those times you tried to tell me something felt wrong?" I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself keeping the peace meant avoiding uncomfortable conversations. I smiled sadly. I used to believe that too. "What do you believe now?" I looked out my kitchen window. "I think real peace only comes after truth." He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he whispered, "I wish I'd learned that sooner." So do I. Sophie, of course, remained Sophie. Children grow. But somehow they also remember the moments adults hope they'll forget. One afternoon, she came home from school carrying a family tree assignment. "Grandma." "What is it?" "I have homework." "Oh, I have to write about someone who taught me what family means." I smiled. "Who did you choose?" She looked at me as though the answer were obvious. "You." My eyes filled with tears. "Why me?" She thought for a second. "Because you stayed." I blinked. "What do you mean, when people were sad?" "When people made mistakes. When people needed another chance. You stayed." Sometimes, the greatest compliments come from 7-year-old children. This spring, we gathered once again for our annual Garcia family reunion. The same farmhouse. The same maple tree. The same cousins. The same laughter. Only this time, something felt lighter. Not because the past had disappeared, because no one was carrying secrets anymore. As afternoon turned into evening, someone shouted the familiar words. "Time for the family picture." Everyone laughed. Some traditions never change. This time, however, nobody asked who would stand where. Nobody argued. Nobody competed. Sophie simply walked into the middle of the group. Then she pointed. "Grandma." I smiled. "Yes." "You stand here." She pointed again. "Mom." Lauren walked over. "You stand beside Grandma." Without hesitation? She did. Our shoulders touched. She looked at me nervously. "Is this okay?" I smiled. "It is." Michael stood beside me. David beside Lauren. Sophie squeezed herself between all of us somehow. The photographer laughed. "I don't think she's leaving much room." Sophie grinned. "We're supposed to be close." Everyone laughed. The photographer raised his camera. "Ready?" Then Sophie shouted, "Wait." The poor photographer lowered his camera again. "What now?" She looked around carefully. "Is everybody here?" We counted together. Grandpa, Grandma, Mom, Dad, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. Satisfied, she smiled. "Okay." The photographer counted. 1. Nobody moved. 2. I looked around, at every face, at every smile, at every person who had chosen truth over pride. 3. Click. The flash lit the evening sky. Just one picture. Yet somehow, it felt like the most important photograph our family had ever taken. Because this one wasn't about looking perfect. It was about belonging. A week later, the printed photograph arrived. Lauren brought it to our house herself. She held it carefully with both hands. She hesitated. I thought maybe it should stay here. I looked at the picture. Every generation, every smile, every hand connected. Nobody standing in front. Nobody hidden behind. Nobody erased. I hung it in the center of the hallway, right where the old reunion picture had always belonged. Visitors often stop to admire it. Some say, "What a beautiful family." Others comment on the colors, the lighting, the smiles. Only I know what makes that picture truly beautiful. It's not the composition. It's not the quality. It's the fact that every single person in that frame fought to find their way back to one another. Sometimes I catch myself standing in front of it before bed. I remember the woman who cried because she believed she'd been erased. Then I look at the woman smiling back from that photograph. She's still there. She was always there. No editing software could ever remove the place she held in the hearts of the people who truly loved her. And that's the lesson I carry with me now. Families aren't built by being the center of every picture. They're built by making sure no one feels invisible inside them. Because photographs don't just preserve faces, they preserve belonging. And the greatest family portrait isn't the one where everyone looks perfect. It's the one where every person knows they never have to disappear to make someone else feel seen. If this journey taught me anything, it's that the deepest wounds in a family rarely begin with shouting. More often, they begin with tiny moments that seem too small to matter. A seat moved farther away at the dinner table, a missing photograph, a tradition quietly replaced, a conversation never had. Those little moments can slowly convince someone they don't belong. But I've also learned something just as important. Love isn't measured by who stands in the center of a picture. It isn't measured by who gets the most attention or who hosts the biggest holiday dinner. Real love makes room for everyone. It doesn't ask someone else to become smaller so we can feel bigger. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It doesn't mean forgetting the truth. Real forgiveness begins only after honesty, accountability, and genuine change. Trust cannot be demanded. It must be rebuilt one decision at a time, one truthful conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Today, when I walk past that family photograph hanging in my hallway, I don't see perfection. I see people who made painful mistakes. I see people who chose to tell the truth. I see people who decided that their family was worth fighting for. Most of all, I see a little girl who reminded all of us that nobody should ever be erased. Perhaps that's why photographs matter so much. They're not just snapshots of faces. They're reminders that every person has a place in the story. And as long as we keep choosing honesty, compassion, and grace, no one ever has to disappear to make someone else feel important. If this story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever felt overlooked, left out, or invisible within your own family? Or have you experienced the healing that comes after difficult truths are finally spoken? Please share your story in the comments. I read them, and I know many others find comfort in realizing they're not alone. Before you go, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always amazing to see this community connecting across so many places. And if stories about family forgiveness and second chances speak to your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing. I'd be honored to have you join me for the next story.